I just love you guys, and I appreciate you being here for us, and I appreciate you doing the things that you're doing, and I appreciate you building this. Please like this episode, as well as every other episode you do enjoy going on right now that I'm very excited about. And I see Doge, and I see the realignment of the educational system coming together for a real unique opportunity that we haven't had in a long time. And that's exciting more and more each day. It all comes back to coming back to yourself, taking your you have three brains, right? You have the brain of the head, you have the brain of the heart, and you have the brain of the gut, gut instinct, right? I would love to really be able to get into some comfortable situations where we can start feeding back into the community that we haven't had in a long time. If we take the right approach, we have the ability to really dramatically affect not only the children growth. We could start turning revenues and rolling them into, for instance, here in this small town, seeing what kind of effects we have. We have coming up very shortly, as much as we should. And I think this is probably the strongest because it has emotion as well. And then those two signal to the brain to send out the chemicals that do the work that needs to be done according to whatever I have already talked a little bit about it with Emma on Emma Lynn and Grandpa Rod. Let's be honest, folks. Most of us have met one, the boss who smiles and then sharpens their knives behind the closed doors, right? The coworker who climbs the ladder by stepping on everyone else's hands. The system that rewards the ruthless and sidelines the decent. Today on Insights and Straight Talk, we're cracking open the playbook, or as our guest, who didn't show, we'll talk about that in a minute, calls it the Corporate Sociopath Handbook. Because in the modern workplace, ambition can be a beautiful thing, right? Until it turns toxic. I'm Rod Duff, joined as always with producer Barbie, we were just talking a minute ago, and we're diving deep into the author and technology leader, Jonathon Grantham. Okay, a man who has spent decades in the trenches of corporate culture for Coca-Cola, Jameson, Volvo, and beyond. He's seen it all: the politics, the dysfunction, the burnout, and the brilliance that still somehow breaks through. And he's asking the question we all need to ask: what happens when leadership loses its soul? When performance metrics matter more than the people, when strategy replaces empathy, when AI and automation becomes the new tools of manipulation instead of transformation. Because here's the truth. Toxic leadership doesn't just live in boardroom. It trickles down in our families, our communities, our confidence, and even our faith in what's fair. But here's the other truth. We can fix it, not through finger pointing, but through rediscovering what ethical leadership actually looks like in a world driven by algorithms and ambition. Jonathon Grantham calls it corporate sociopathy. I call it a wake-up call personally, because the middle class, the heartbeat of America, and by extension the world, lives inside these systems every single day. We show up, we give our all, and too often we're left just drained, man. Wondering why the good guys keep losing. But what if they didn't have to, right? Think about this. What if courage, integrity, and clarity could compete and win against ego, deceit, and chaos? That's what this conversation is about. Jonathon's not here to whine about the workplace. He's here to change it. to give you guys the tools, the language, and the leadership mindset to spot toxicity early. Stand firm on your values and build cultures that actually heal instead of harm. So whether you're a manager, a maker, or middle-class warrior, just trying to survive the next meeting, this one's for you. Stay tuned, because by the end of the episode, you'll see how AI, digital transformation, and human decency can and must coexist. I'm Rod Duff. This is Insights and Straight Talk, and we're talking about the corporate sociopath, how to lead, survive, and regenerate in a broken system. Watch, learn, regenerate. And remember, don't let toxic culture win. So let's get into this. Come up here. Wait, let me move that. Sorry about this, folks. We're going to turn that off, and we're going to go right here so I can see the message. Wow, we got 63 people on already. Glad you're here. And this is an exciting topic. This is kind of a topic that goes on, kind of builds on yesterday's show. That was an amazing show. We had about 700 people on. Wonderful questions as always. You guys are the heartbeat of this show, and the reason that we're able to provide such a complimentary back and forth between our community. And by the way, don't forget to please subscribe. We're still floating at that same number. I need to get 1,000 more subscribers in the next 2 weeks to meet my goal. And it's just one of it's I don't know where that comes in as far as criticality or importance in the building of this program, but it's a goal I set about a month ago, because we're really climbing, and it seems like they go through like the stock market. It does this, kind of thing. So please, 63 people on, please subscribe to our Substack. You'll find that in the description portion. There's a link in there for the description of signing into our Substack. It's no charge. We do Monday Barbieisms. Barbie really creates some very cool insights through what's been going on in our world over the previous week. She kind of lays out some thoughts and some ideas for us to use in our daily lives. And then on Wednesday, our Substack is it's called Poems and Pages. And sometimes I'll drop. I've written a lot of poems, and so I'm starting to get ready to put a book of poetry together. But I want to kind of get some reaction from you folks on what you think, and that's a totally free subscription. Everybody can comment, so I'd really love your input. And then Pages, my book, WTF, happened when I was in my 50s. A beacon, a call out, a maneuver for the great middle class of America, for empowering the great middle class of America. I've got a little over 100 people on. Appreciate you guys, as always, being here. And I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors here, the Magnum City Library. And they as you see, they've got a great studio here set up for me, and for when we start having, where's my chair? I don't see it in the background there. I think it'd be over. Oh, I don't think right here. You should be able to see that. That's for as soon as we start having teens of Mangum and Greer County coming in to join the conversation live, along with Emma Lynn and myself on Saturdays. So that's an exciting opportunity that we're still building on. There's so many things that I'm doing, and so just trying to make time within the time constraints that I do have here at the library to get those programs out and more attended to. 124 people. Thank you. Of warming up your coffee and sipping some sweet tea or some hot tea, depending on your need. I'm drinking some sweet tea these days. I'm in the South, and so Oh, sweet tea, so good. You know, that round table I went to at the Oklahoma Health Department here about 3 weeks ago. I I was pounding down some of that tea. It was so good. Any of you guys ever have sweet tea? I know that's not what this topic's about, but I just want to give a shout out to the Mangum Public Library. And I told yesterday a story in my opening monologue about, I think he was around 12 years old, a young boy. He stopped me while I was, go back and forth walking from my home to here or driving. I try and mostly walk because it's good for you. It's health and wellness. So anyway, he said, "Hey, are you that podcaster guy?" I said, "I am. Insights and Straight Talk." He goes, "Yeah, yeah." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, I really like that." And he says, "And you know what else? I really want to thank you for what you're doing for the people here in the city of Mangum and Greer County." And I thought, wow, that was huge, man. I mean, that was a young boy, not even a teenager yet, but I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of need here in the rural South, and I think that this show provides a service in that we are reaching out to people with expert guests when they show up. I'll get to that in a second. With expert guests and having them bring the messages that are needed. And that's why I've started doing this monologue ahead of time, because, it kind of, to me, it gives the ability to straight on. Hey, by the way, your first name, I know you were on yesterday, and could you, if you got time there, would you put in the comments your how to pronounce your first name, Mr. Valino? Beautiful name, by the way. But this gentleman today, I don't know what happened. I mean, he was like begging me to come on. I hope there's nothing urgent or bad. We have almost 200 people on now. Thank you. Come in and subscribe. Got some questions already going here, and so I didn't get any. I didn't get any email back return. I didn't get any comments return. I was like, hey guys, you got to get here 10 minutes before the show starts, because we have a live audience. This is your guys' time. Yes, the show is providing those expert, when they show up, with those expert guests who are bringing real valuable information. And it hurts me, not well, it hurts me, but it also bums me out, because through those guests, I mean, we're all getting this information, but it's so, I mean, somebody asked me yesterday, what was a pivotal moment in your week that really has stuck in your head? And it was this point, in that I have become such a, we talk about building from the inside out. Wow, 230 people on, and man, the questions are flying. So let me just wrap this up real quick. And my answer to that gentleman was, you guys, this show and the episodes that we have build so much of me. I get free advice. I mean, these are experts that are that have entire careers around providing this advice. And so while the show uses its platform to provide a message, the ability for us to hear those messages day in and day out, and me be able to drill down and get information from them is a blessing to me, and anybody who's around me, because I am not near the same person I was before, and that's because I'm working on myself off of the messages that come through it day in and day out on this show. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for allowing me to keep this independent media source driving forward and providing you this service, because we all gain from this, me included. So thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. On Wednesday, I got a request from one of our past guests. She lives in Sweden. We stream all over the world, and she made a request and said, "Hey, I know you're a writer. I know you're in my opinion, we do a number of shows on religion here. The book itself that I'm dropping on Wednesday, a summary chapter, besides the poems. First one went out as Texas Sun, and that's about my grandkids and my kids. And you ought to read that. Subscribe to Substack. It's in the description below. But the that kid's comment just day before yesterday, that hung on my heart. That's saying, okay, we're doing something right here. And that was a 12-ish-year-old kid. He might not even been 12. He's a big boy, but he might even be younger than that, somewhere between, I don't know, 12 and 14. That was a special moment to me. So let's hit some of these people. We 378 people. Glad you guys are here. Sorry, our guest. So our guest, I don't know what happened. Hopefully everything's okay with him, but I guess I'll find out at some point. Jonathon Grantham, interesting guys from the UK, and like I said in the opening, I mean this is a guy that ran programs for Coca-Cola, for Volvo, for Jameson, and a bunch of others, a number of others, and his insights would be truly fascinating. Sorry, I did not realize I didn't turn off my phone. There and there. Now I'm off. We won't be disturbed. So Wanho, I think maybe that's right. Wanho, fascinating topic, and yes, this one builds on yesterday's similar topic in Captain Set Sail. That was a fantastic episode, and it would have been a perfect bookend to these 2 days. But I've got some experience here, so let's see what we can pull together and answer your guys' questions. So fascinating topic. Can ambition and empathy really exist in today's corporate world? Well, yeah, absolutely. I really wanted to get into some of the AI discussions with him. By the way, we're going to have the guy on that was on yesterday. We're going to have him back on, and we're going to really focus more on the AI side of things, because that's a fantastic. It fits in the same playlist or lane, as I like to call it, with business and finance and AI and the future of business. So it's a really nice tie together there. I think today is going to be a little bit shorter show, unless this Jonathon dude shows up magically. We've had a couple of people do that, but I'm not going to not start the show on time. I gave him 7 minutes, so I kind of split between, hey, where the heck are you, Rod, and hopefully him being here. So, but he can join at any time. There's a little boop that goes in my ear. It's a little signal that somebody's entered the studio. So hopefully we'll hear that here soon enough. But let's go on to the next one here. Matthew Uber. Oh, I love your beard, dude. Nice. How do you? Oh, did I? Wait, I think I skipped something here, didn't I? Yeah, it can. And building on yesterday's message for Wanho here, and empathy can exist in today's corporate world, and it kind of leans into part of the subject towards the second third of the show yesterday. If anybody was on that show, because of its topic, the curiosity in what he said and the brilliance in what he said is it's gotta be in the corporate world. It's got to exist. Because here's the thing, we were talking about this. Remember this? In the 80s, there was kind of a shift in corporate culture from how it had been, which is really more person first. I mean, it's not a perfect situation in when you're working, unless you find your journey, your path, your mission. Unless you find that mission, that changes everything. Now I know we're slightly different, and that's what I was so excited here, because we're looking at the topic from a differing direction. And so the comparisons would have been really pretty special, I think. But building on that, in the 80s, we shifted in the corporate environment. And then it got really embedded into the 90s, because all the, as we were talking about yesterday, all the MBAs and all the leaders that have been taught by all these leadership programs and schools and so forth, that shift went from having that culture of the work ethic into the needs of Wall Street and making those numbers. So yes, we can, and it has, and it does still, especially in smaller businesses, it does still have that whisper of realizing that just like the great American middle class is the backbone of our society, of our government, of our country, the workers, like I say in my opening, on some of those opening segments, I say, hey, you've got to, you've got my point now, damn it. What was I talking about? All you have to do is fix it, right? All you have to do is step back and start understanding that this can be fixed, that this should be fixed, and it needs to coexist within the culture, because the great middle class is subject to this culture environment every day. And then, as I said in the opening, it trickles down to our families and our communities and our belief, our faith that things can be fair. That has not been the majority emphasis in corporate America from the 90s or even the 80s, because of that Wall Street influence, where it's just all about making the numbers and something less important being put over the long range planning of a business, which is, it's expensive to rehire people, and people get less efficient when they have that sociopathic kind of environment that they go in every day. Because, like I said, you're beat down, you're drained, and then tomorrow you got to go in and do the same thing. And why? The only reason you're there because of the leadership is because you're just collecting a paycheck. You're not working on a mission. And when the mission is there, great example, there's places in the world where the entire population are centurions, in other words, living more than 100 years. And these are all not new. It's not a medical thing. It's a knowing your mission. It's a having a mission, and that keeps you getting up and going every day and fills those endorphins in you and things that you're excited about. So then you become more productive. You become more of an agency for the organization. That needs to shift back and better than it was before. So I hope that answers your question, my friend. So going back to Matthew here, how do you spot a corporate sociopath before it's too late? You building from the inside out, you can figure out in a very short amount of time. I consider myself a curious person. Walk into a room and kind of read read the energy, read the things that make up the people that I'm interjecting with. And I've talked about this, and we talked about it in yesterday's show. You have three brains. You have the brain of the head, or the brain. You have the brain of the heart, and you have the brain of the stomach, gut instinct. So if you're really using those and relying on your own growth, your own knowledge base, your own inner self, your human experience, if you've trained it by just being honest with yourself and really looking at your gut instinct, is this a corporate sociopath or is it not? And then you watch the actions, right? I use when talking about politics, I use trust but verify. An old Reagan epitaph. A beautiful way to look at interaction with people. So out of the gate, you don't want to do anything but trust, because you've walked into this existing culture, and you've made the decision to plant your future here at this place. And so you've got to trust yourself, but you also got to trust that your decision was accurate in coming to this place for employment. If you're using your gut instinct and you're trusting out of the gate, but you're within your own head verifying that that trust is kept, that trust can be kept. And this isn't a one-way street, and it's not like the company owes you anything. They're paying you for a service, but how that service looks a lot of times depends on what the leadership, who you report to, and the leadership around that organization. And that's where you start verifying how that works. And typically it's a good relationship, especially for a company that is on the rise, or innovative, or just a good place to work. So you can definitely, if you're looking eyes wide open, and you have a gut, you trust your gut instinct, and that's going to send signals to the brain to then send out those chemicals that have your body react. And then there's the heart, which is probably the most powerful brain, because it has emotion, and it feels those soft components. Make sense? Let's move on. Can toxic leadership ever change, or is it part of their DNA? Oh yeah, it can. Yeah, it can change. And I think that too many people have been focusing, leadership has been focusing on the wrong priorities. Because right now it's all about making the numbers, right? And I get that. I mean, a business needs to stay open, right? It needs to keep the lights on, needs to keep the machinery moving, it needs to keep the employees paid, and it needs to make a profit, right? And hopefully that profit's going to whatever those things are that it does, including R&D, because that makes a company even further ahead, right? R&D is an important aspect. Sometimes I don't think we've utilized that approach often enough, and I think that's starting to come back, especially now with AI, which, by the way, we're by far the leader in that, as well as crypto. President Trump's done some pretty impressive things. He's a businessman, and I think he's one of those that care more about the people than the profit. And seriously, I'm not a home. What do they call it? Homer. I'm not a homer for Trump, but I am able to see between the noise that's all out there and the chaos, the actions, the results. And yes, he's failed in business, and he's gone bankrupt and all that. I mean, I have, and people do, especially ones that are out there in front and pushing. And maybe in some business decisions that needed to go that wrong direction or forced him to go that wrong direction. But here for our country, in his leadership role now, let's start it off. He doesn't need money. He doesn't need power. He's got all that. I mean, he was more powerful because all of Hollywood loved him before he came down that escalator. And people have been asking him to go into politics for, God, decades. There's interviews. What's that big, heavy lady? She used to live in Chicago. Now she lives in San Bernardino. She did she hands out checks sometimes to people in the audience. Oprah Winfrey. She look at that interview between her and Oprah Winfrey, and then compare it to today. And at that time, everybody thought he would be on the other side of the aisle. And he didn't. So all of a sudden he became a villain. And because he's putting the American people first, there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that don't want that. I talk about look for somebody who can and wants to make America go better, move ahead. That's a pretty easy thing to start to distinguish if you're using your gut, not the fake stuff, not the I only listen to one channel and so everything they say is right and everything the other folks on the other networks say is wrong and evil. They both, that's all they do to each other all day. But it's got to boil down much more to where we communicate, because it's not about them, it's about us. And because we're the backbone of the American infrastructure, the American financial structure, and industrial. It's without us that none of that happens. And yes, we need leaders. Leaders have vision. Leaders give direction. Leaders develop their workers, their great middle class, their people, to create to have that movement towards whatever that direction is for that company. And that's to a degree happening, but it's to a bigger degree lacking. And it's lacking because that direction. I really loved yesterday's discussion about setting sail and creating a journey, creating a mission, because that gives people purpose. And when people have purpose, the entire feeling, the entire picture changes, and for the good. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's part of their DNA. Well, the DNA of the company, to a degree, I would agree with you there, Damien. So if you want me to build on that, bring on another question here, and I'd be happy to address it. How can ethical leaders thrive in a system that rewards ruthlessness? Well, I mean, it does reward ruthlessness, and there's other words that are used for it. But that's what it is, ruthlessness. When it's only about the bottom line and the numbers, and about the hard, the spreadsheets, and how is Wall Street going to react to this? And it's not about how are we going to make the mission of this company something that the workers, the people in this company, will admire, buy into, grow through, and develop a better product. A better environment was the word I was trying to think of before. So that environment now shapes the way people interact and the way people perform. And that's when things start to really get special. And when things start to get special like that, that's when that whole environment, that culture gets to the next level, and that next level creates the next level uh, uh, corporation, the next level of productivity, the next level. I mean, there's benefit to this. It's just the difference in an approach. It's not. This isn't all softy, cuddly. Business is you're going out to win deals, and you're going out to get business because you're going out to grow the company, whatever your role is in there. And when you provide a better environment, a better working condition, a better culture, a mission that people can drive into, then now you're creating a product that far exceeds what you were doing. I don't care what company it is. If the culture's there, that company is better for it, and the people and the product are better for it, and the customer receives a better product or service. And so there's reasons for companies, for that corporate entity to do better. And it's not, like I was saying, it's not just being a softie, or it's about being the best version of yourself, so that your people can be the best version of themselves, and now your company becomes the best version of itself. Kind of warm in here today. So I'd run with that one there. Hey, Giga, love your name, and thank you for being here. Bradley Pomp, look at who's in the house. Bradley Pomp in the house. Does AI make corporate manipulation easier or harder to detect? Yeah, AI is a big subject. That's a really big subject. Let me change. I told Bradley I'd give him a shout out every time he shows up on the show. I remember his name really well. But AI doesn't make it harder to detect, because I think the culture of a company is more of soft tissue, not written words or written directives. Now, a little bit of that could be true. Now that I say written directive, in that you could be driving a message in a direction that's toxic, or psychopathic. It's like I said in the monologue. We've all seen these people. Somebody that is a leader, smiles in the boardroom, in the meeting, but then behind closed doors is sharpening their knife. Their knives, maybe to stab you in the back, or run with those images. And we met that person that's climbing the corporate ladder by stepping on everybody else's hands. And so in those arenas, AI wouldn't necessarily, at least that I know so far, where AI has been developed. There's a whole, every year, every minute, every second, AI is developing and coming faster and coming harder and being more. So technically, it could be true that it would make it easier or harder to detect. But this comes back to you, the individual, I think more so. What AI needs to be, and it's here, the Jetsons are here, but AI needs to be a tool to empower and not to strip away. Oh, wow, we got somebody from around the world here. Charles One Metals Bank. I don't know what that is. Somebody's, I think, trying to use my platform to advertise jewels and precious stones products. Okay, whatever. That's kind of weird that they would do that. I'm just gonna delete that. That's not even worth. It's not even worth having on here. So yeah, I'd say the corporate manipulation technically could be in SOPs or standard operating procedures that are written by AI through somebody else's sending it out thing. Or let's see, where else could it get into manipulation? Hiring practices. I mean, kind of setting stages for people that are unrealistic or otherwise not to our benefit. But where I do see AI is going, and this is the whole bottom line. We have to be better ourselves. So one, we could recognize things like this, and two, so that when this, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 50 years from now, the world's going to be totally different. I mean, you won't even recognize, even the kids today are not going to be able to recognize how things operate. And by the way, there's AI, there's OI, organizational intelligence. There's a number of this whole thing is bigger than we even kind of realize. But what it can and should do is, after we control the narrative by our corporations and by our political leaders, that utopia is on its way. Now, who will benefit is the only difference. Something, either we're going to have the narrative and then our utopia is we're included, or those corporations, those political leadership bands, folks will use that same path to be directed their way, where we as the great middle class, the voters, the employees, the backbone, we control that narrative, and then we all take part. If you know what I'm saying there. It's a very critical time, especially for my kids and grandkids. Me, if I become a centurion, that would be 50-ish years from now. Well, I'm 63, so that'd be 113. But whatever those numbers are, people in my generation also have, because 50 years is going to be a huge difference from 15. I think 15 in 15 or even 10 years or even a year, but really 10, 15 years is what I'm looking at, to where it's going to be a completely AI is going to be AI, OI, all the, all of the coming technologies and innovations. They're going to be pretty ingrained then. But certainly 50 years from now, as my friend yesterday on the show made a good point, that in any industry, in any company, you see what they've done over the last 50 years, or what it has done over the last 50 years, and you really can project pretty well what's going to be happening, where that's headed. And I just think the only part I slightly disagree with what he's saying is, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near 50 years. I think 25 years, because all the past where these studies have been done about, the Industrial Revolution, cars, airplanes, space travel, all that I get. But that's a much slower moving item, however you want to express that. And so I think AI is changing all the rules and will continue to change all the rules. So where you would study for 50 years to see where it's going, or so you've looked over the past 50 years of something, from this point on kind of where it's headed, right? I don't think it's going to need 50 years to be there at this point. So yeah, Bradley, great question. I appreciate it. That's exactly that's a very good question. I'm really glad I got the opportunity to think about that one a little bit. Allie, so what drives some people to use power destructively? Greed. I mean, we see that in politics all day long. Lies, greed, lining your own pocket, meaning greed. Um, I think some people may fall into that innocently while still destructive, but let's give them credit a little more innocently. Maybe it's the way some people were raised. The example yesterday was, and I'm using yesterday a lot because this was a very similar, this is a very similar message. And I really appreciate you guys asking these questions. They're definitely within my wheelhouse. And as far as specifics about our guest today, Jonathon, as far as questions, how did he come up with this or that or whatever? I appreciate the wording changing of the questions here, because I know you guys study what we do and the marketing that's out there. And by the way, sign up for a Substack. Please subscribe. Help me get to 10,000 subscribers this month. Still 2 weeks left. Still got a 1,000. We're just kind of flat right now. I'm hoping for a nice little bump here coming up. That's what kind of happens. I've noticed over the last year, there'll be a flat line. One will add, one will drop off. Two, there's just a little bit of quiver, and then all of a sudden there'll be several people that jump on. And I hope that's this episode, and I hope we get 1,000 new subscribers out of the show today, and at least a couple hundred, at least double digits. Come on, help me out. Pass the word around. Jump on and subscribe. Subscribe to our Substack. Some great information's coming out on. We do Barbieisms, which is a deep dive on the more emotional side of the topics that we talk about, and then it also gives you a heads up on the next week's or that current week. So Monday and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. What the topics are and who's the guests on the show. So definitely hit that subscribe button on Insights, or in the description on the Insights and Straight Talk Substack, which is our newsletter. And again, I want to give a shout out to Mangum City Library, Joe. He opened up for me yesterday to do that show. We had almost 800 people on the show, in the audience, like you yesterday, and it was Veterans Day yesterday, and so the city buildings and the country's buildings, the mail, the city halls, the city libraries, especially in this small town, they shut down for that holiday, and so I had asked him. I said, "Hey, can we? I got a show thing," and I didn't find out that they were shut down until the day before, or they were closed on that day, not shut down. So I said, "Joe, man, I'm sorry, this is late notice, but you're not going to be open tomorrow. Are you going to be out?" "No, we're not. We're not. It's a holiday." And I'm like, "Oh." I said, "I have this really cool guest on." I said, "Can you do me a solid and open up for like an hour and a half?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll do that." And he's a veteran too, so he was joking with me afterwards, because that show ended up going 2.5, almost two, right at 2 hours. And I was supposed to be here early at 1:00 with him. And then I'm not a city employee, so I can't be in the building or, have locks, touch locks or any of that stuff. So here, somebody from the, here have have to be here when I'm here. So he said, okay, I'll come in at 1. I'll stay till 2:30. So the show was from 1:30 to 2:30, 1 hour long. And you guys know it rarely goes. I mean, we're already at 50 minutes. But yesterday's show, we started at 1:30 and it ended at 3:30. And I'm like, I am so sorry doing that. Afterwards, he was kind of joking with me. He goes, and I'm a veteran too. So he was there celebrating his efforts to this country, and enjoying that holiday. And I ended up being. He got here at 1:15, so 1:45 till 3:30. He was here at the library instead of cooking hot dogs at his home or something. So, but I really just another reason for a great shout out to him. And Allie, what drives somebody to use power destructively? It could be their background. It could be they lose their way along the path, or like yesterday's show, the MBAs coming out of the schools and teaching, business practices and so forth. They started in the 80s getting a different message, an improved, an updated message. I don't know about improved, but an updated message. And all from that point on, the direction of how leaders perform their, what they're learning from the schools, the Harvards and the big schools, teach Brown, Penn's business school, Penn State's business school, and even further down, their emphasis to people in those degrees, those MBAs, the emphasis shifted in a direction that wasn't. Hold on, in a direction that wasn't helpful in looking back. Oh, I think I lost my. Yeah, there we go. We're back. I accidentally shut off my headphones. It was a weird sound. So it just was silence. So with that now, and people like the guests on this show, when we talk about leadership, you can see a shift really people starting to go, wait a minute, this isn't right. And you see that where a little bit starts, and then it starts to change the system. And that's a beautiful thing. So it could be any of those, or maybe I don't remember if I started off with, maybe it's their upbringing. Maybe it's just they lost their way. Maybe it's really corporate culture shifted, and so they've come through this system since the 80s, and still today, obviously. And so these things, in my opinion, cultivate and so impact and so create this type of approach. That's got to start shifting. And once that does start to shift, then I think we see it, the little bit become more and more and more. Like I used the old Perel commercial, if you guys remember that, and so on and so on and so on. And then it finally changes the system. How long that takes, I don't know. But I think those are some of the reasons, Allie, for why people do that. And I think that's kind of how it works. So Branson, can nice leaders still win in high pressure corporate environments? Boy, these are a lot of very similar questions to yesterday. He's obviously he's not going to be on today's show, but at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, everything has to start from your inside out. Okay. And that's in all of life. That's for all of us in the great middle class. And that's for any subject that you want to talk about, because I use this example. If you're sitting here right next to me, and we're seeing the same thing, nobody lives, every single person lives in a different world, side by side. And here's why. Because if you're sitting next to me, for example, and we're watching this thing, we're gonna see it differently, or we're gonna react to it potentially differently, but we're gonna absorb it differently, because we look through our lives. Our lives are looked through the lenses of our own eyes. In my case, is the lenses of my glasses helping my own eyes lenses. This I say that because when you're working through the lenses, and then it's processing that information, and then your beliefs, your how that information is taken in and processed changes from person to person, because they have their, for me, 63 years of past exposure and presence and information. So if you're working on yourself, and you're combining that with your question here, Branson, and you're combining that with your belief systems, then you're now able to make and use that gut instinct to be able to make right decisions in pressure packed corporate worlds. And I say that because when we work within ourselves, then it's easier to become a nice person, but still have the experience to make pressure decisions and to make hard decisions the right way. Like if somebody's underperforming, as we talked about yesterday, somebody's underperforming, and you have to react to that, and your approach, let's say you're mission driven, right? Your approach matters, because you can't let it happen, because that's not fair to the rest of the people putting in their efforts and time, and it's not fair to the corporation, the company. But what it is what is that person going to do with, however let's say you got to let them go. If you know that person, if you know them, because you've been leading in a way that's people driven first, you can direct them. You can either make that change or let them know, hey, we got to let you go, but in a way that is knowing who they are, but in a way that is, because you know who they are and their priorities, you can make that delivery. You can address that situation in a way that also fulfills them, while still completing your task in protecting the needs and the interests of the company, as well as the mission of that company and the mission of the people that work within that person's department or anywhere in the company. Because if that continues on by an indecision, by your own indecision, then what you're doing is you're putting an anchor around everybody else in the organization, and that's not fair. So I hope that answered your question, Branson. James Show, how you doing, guys? I only say guys because there's a picture of two guys there. What role does HR really play when leadership turns toxic? Oh, that's a hard question to answer. I almost said ask. That's a hard question to answer, in that it depends on the organization. It depends on the operations and procedures of the organization. It depends on the people within the HR department. But this kind of goes back to what Branson was asking earlier. And, what role does HR really play when leadership turns toxic? So HR's job, human resources, is to make sure the people of the organization not only fit within the guidelines or work within the guidelines of the organization, but are also benefited, all the stuff that employs the human entity within the organization need to do for that organization or within that organization. So yeah, it definitely can, it definitely plays a role. And what that role is depends on how all that's structured out. If you've got a toxic environment, then, well, if you don't have one and you've got a really good HR person or department that's led to operate in a certain way by a good organization that has set those and established those positions or established those operating procedures, then if there is a toxic situation, that can be corrected pretty easily. But if it's part of the same vibe, then it's going to be the opposite. In that HR department would probably not benefit, but play into, would not alert situations to the right personnel and have the right guidance for correcting those situations, if you know what I mean there. Hey guys, everybody, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your questions. I hope we had an interchange here or an exchange here that benefited your time in being here. And again, I really apologize for the guest today not showing up. And I don't know the situation. There was no warning ahead of time that said, hey, well, I'm not going to be able to be there, blah, 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 like the doctor did. And now that was a really short one, but he had a problem with his, he was in upper New York and rural, in the more towards Pennsylvania. And there was an issue with his internet. So we rescheduled for like 2 weeks later. And I just did this kind of thing. I did a recap. Now I knew that was the situation, so I could do a preview of the show, and in this case, I just don't have those answers. But this is Insights and Straight Talk. I'm your host, Rod Duff. I'm proud to be here every single day, and stick around for after the outro. Give me that second or two in there to say something wacky or funny or just peace, because I'm out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. So